Orange Pill. Orange Pill. Orange Pill.
Smash that buy. Smash that buy.
Oh, yeah, you got to smash the buy. It's fun.
Smash it, smash it, smash it. So this has been an amazing 6 weeks, the past 6 weeks to be smash buying. Remember, we first did our first smash buy when swanbitcoin.com first came on as sponsors of Orange Pill Podcast. We did our huge first smash buy. We bought $1,000, then another $1,000, then another $1,000. And I was like, oh, Max, I'm a little bit nervous because this is the first time I've ever bought at such a high number, like in the 5 digits. I've never, ever bought Bitcoin in 5 digits. So I was thinking, oh, this is pretty steep to be buying it at $20,000. Well, obviously that's worked out well.
That's the thing about Bitcoin. There's never a better time to buy it than right now. Of course, there was a better time to buy it, and that would be last year. But that's not possible. So the second best time to buy it is right now. One of the greatest things about Swan, I was just thinking about it. Not only can you dollar cost averaging, not only can you do the smash buy, but you can set up your account so that the coins automatically are swept into your Casa wallet, multi-sig Casa wallet, right? So that's automatic as well. You don't have to think about that. You can set up for dollar cost averaging. It takes the money out of your account, bank account on a regular basis every day or every week or every month, buys Bitcoin at the price that it is right there at the best rates in the industry. And then it'll, at the right time, just sweep it into your Casa wallet again without you having to do a darn thing.
Casa are not sponsors of this episode, but we do have a discount code for you. It's Orange Pill, one word, not 2 words, one word, and you get 10% off. It's a great service to protect all those sweet, sweet corn you buy off of swanbitcoin.com/Max, MAX. But, I also want to say that Swan Bitcoin also has smash buying. So you can buy instantly. You hit the buy instant button and you can grab it at whatever price is in the market at that moment. And we've had an unusual activity over the past few weeks, which is that according to Dovi Wan, she's a Chinese citizen, she's born and raised in China, but she lives all over the world. She's a trader and a, investment banker sort of person. And she says that what's going on at the Asia trading time, that they're dumping huge quantities of Bitcoin because they are still in bear market mentality. And of course, in a bear market, you should sell the rallies, right? That's when you sell the rallies. And bear markets are pretty vicious at standing back up. When you think it's going, back to sleep and it's all over, they rise really high and they soar 20%. Bull markets are the other way. I mean, they look pretty aggressive and blah, blah, and then they just calm down and they crash. You'll have spectacular crashes in a bull market. And that's when you should buy the dip. You shouldn't be buying dips on bear markets. So anyway, they've been selling the rally. And as she points out, transferring Bitcoin wealth to mostly America.
Yeah, it's fascinating just to see how the geopolitics work in the Bitcoin community. There's so much of this is just shifting around. There is no central authority. There's no center of it at all. It's all distributed. It's distributed network, and different regions respond to it differently at different times. And they get that murmurations, I like to call it. If you look at the starlings in the sky and they all fly together in some way and you can't figure it out. They're not communicating, but they must be communicating. Bitcoin is like this. You got all these thousands of nodes around the world, and they're like starlings in this murmuration pattern, flying around in different undulations, and different things are happening. And you can look at it and just awe at the beauty of it. Really, you don't necessarily know exactly what's going on, except that there's big changes.
Right. The big change, which I think is remarkable because Max and I, even before Bitcoin, what we were talking about, which is what Satoshi identified in the Genesis block, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. It was the central banks, the fact that all government agencies, institutions revolved around bailing out all the bad decisions nonstop of bankers and the elite. And so we were talking about the global insurrection against banker occupation prior to Bitcoin. And then Bitcoin came along, and you didn't need to sit back and hope that these institutions give you a little bit of money. See, right now across America, part of the reason why I believe what we're seeing is a hyperinflationary collapse of the US dollar, because you see the Biden administration got elected just as a lot of third Banana Republic presidents are elected. They go around and they tell the people, we're going to give you free money, right? And you see that where people are demanding $2,000, which is very Dr. Evil sort of amounts. Like they're like, please, can you give us $2,000? You gave Jamie Dimon $2 trillion. It's not that much I'm asking. It's like, yeah, if you're going to ask for something, go big, go large, or go home.
Right. It's like Venezuela, right? Hugo Chavez and his successor. I mean, they campaign on this. How much are they going to redistribute the wealth? How much are they going to print? And it all ends tragically with all that paper money in the streets swept up as garbage.
Yeah. And of course, Boris Yeltsin, I don't know if you remember this, if you're old enough, he did go around on a tank and went to like various villages around the Soviet Union, Russia, the Soviet Union had collapsed, and he was trying to get elected for the first time. And then he was promising rubles to everybody. He was totally drunk, promising rubles to everybody. And that's how you get elected. I mean, as it were, he didn't get elected, but then the U.S. installed him anyway, and they fired those tanks onto the Duma. But, I had asked on Orange Pill Podcast, we tweeted the dollar is in a full-blown hyperinflationary crash against Bitcoin. Put your wheelbarrow away and take the orange pill instead. So the most important thing to me about this is that I think that sort of passivity that has been set in motion, especially since 1971, of an all US dollar debt standard around the world, is that you're always hoping that the government is nice to you, that you're always hoping they give you some sort of handout or something trickles down or somehow it gets better. And in fact, it's getting worse and worse every day because of inflation. Anything you could possibly save, like you have no future to hope for, because what's the point of saving? And savings is an act of hope in the future. Is like if your savings are being devalued day after day after day, and the only way there's no way to enjoy life, because you have to be on that hamster wheel of like working and working, working to make the interest payment on your mortgage or your credit card or your student loans and all this other stuff. Is like the mindset of like not needing to sit around and wait for them to come, perhaps give you a few $1,000s after they've given how many trillions, we don't know. Nobody knows, because we're not able to audit the system, right? Nobody knows how many trillions of dollars have gone to the bankers.
No. That's right. They definitely don't want people to be individually sovereign, to be independently wealthy, because then they are going to be difficult to control, right? As long as people are on that debt hamster wheel, they're a lot easier to control. And if they're out there giving, rationing out the green funny money coupons so that you can live another day to eat a protein pill, you're a lot easier to control than if you sit back and you've got what's called fuck you money. And you can just say, hey, guess what? Go beg somewhere else, politician. I'm busy. And if enough people are in that position, then the politicians are going to be defunded. And in America, of course, that would be great. Same thing with the central banks. Same thing with the Wall Street banks.
And, in my mind, it's even more than that, because you don't need fuck you money. Fuck you money is one Satoshi. Right now, you can get that for 1 penny. So even less than a penny. So that is fuck you money, because as soon as you stop sitting back passively on your sofa, waiting another day, another week, another month, another year, another decade for them to come rescue you, to make this misery stop. As soon as you turn off that mindset of waiting for them, as if the government is not you, as if the government, all that money that they're printing is not taking from you, you're giving it to them. Like, why sit around and wait for them to give you something. I just don't see that mentality. So once you end that mentality, you buy one Satoshi, just a penny. I'm not asking you to risk anything more than 1 penny. Just put a penny into it. Go get a Lightning app and just buy 1 penny's worth and watch your mindset change. Watch you stop being a victim, stop being passive, stop just waiting for life to happen and sort of grab life, take it by the orange pills.
Right.
And
here's an orange pill. Right. Here it is. This is cost one. Here, I'm giving you this.
Oh, I thought you were showing it to the audience.
See, this is 1 penny for an orange pill. You swallow 1 penny worth of orange pill and you have a mindset, a mind and consciousness expanding experience. Your mindset changes and you go from being a dependent, constantly waiting for the fiat money pusher to being orange pilled, living in the orange pill nation. Da, da, da.
Da, da, da.
So exciting. So exciting.
It's exciting. It's the best feeling ever. And it's spreading. But again, I really think this is the beginning of a hyperinflationary collapse. And that is something that we've been talking about for, almost 18 years now, Max, on our various content. And we were talking about that before because it has to hyperinflate against something, right? The problem is we have an all fiat global financial system.
Yep.
So it's hard to tell how much chaos there actually is. Bitcoin reveals the chaos that was there all this time. The whole time it was there. The fact that it's going up 10,000 a week, in price, that's exposing, that's showing you Bitcoin is stable. What's collapsing is the system around us. And most importantly, the system is based on our perception. So our faith in these institutions and the faith in the US dollar is disintegrating. But that's always been there, but you've only been able to judge like the US dollars up against the euro or the yen or down or, so it's all these like, they were always chaotic, those fiat currencies, but now Bitcoin exposes it because gold would have, the bond market might have, but they were like, basically abused and gaslit, all the gold bugs and bond vigilantes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That there was a thing called the bond vigilante. And the last time we heard about it was during the Clinton administration. And because the bond market sold off when Hillary Clinton at the time, married to the president, was talking about healthcare reform and costing a lot of money. And it was worth the investment. And the bond vigilantes sold the bond market off sharply. 1993, if you remember, was a bond crash. That was the moment when the bond market decided to punish Hillary Clinton for talking about universal healthcare or expanding healthcare. And sure enough, that was tabled. And Bill Clinton was read the Riot Act and said, look, you've got to abandon this program and we'll get you reelected. If you keep going down this path, the bond market will continue to fall and you're going to not get reelected. And but heading into the years subsequent to that, the bond market met the central banks and what's called quantitative easing. So they neutralized the bond's ability to send accurate price signals in a way that would impose some fiscal discipline. Next came the gold vigilantes. The gold vigilantes up until 2008 were pretty good at keeping the price of gold rising along with the debt in the system as people were hedging against all that debt / money printing. In 2008, the remit of the policymakers and bankers around the world were changed, and central bankers, to allow them to expand the quantity of paper money, gold, that they could print. And now what we see is for every quantity of paper money that's being printed to expand the money supply, the amount of derivatives that are there to keep the price of gold suppressed also supplies. These two things are expanding at about the same pace, and this is quantifiable, and you can look at the numbers. So the gold vigilantes were neutered. The bond vigilantes were neutered. The central bank had a total oligopoly around the world, colluding to keep rates low because of deflation, while they were printing trillions that went to pockets of their friends who bought fine art, apartment buildings, Swiss ski chalets, and other assets that were all going up by the amount of money printing that was going on, 15 to 20% a year. And by the way, let's use that as collateral to go borrow some more money to buy another chalet and watch that go up 20% a year. And the wealth and income gap expands exponentially. Into the picture comes Bitcoin. Bitcoin puts a lie to the system. And it took a while for people to figure it out. But now here in 2021, people have said, you know what? I hear what Bitcoin telling me, that the system is really rigged and all fiat money is in a hyperinflationary collapse / lack of confidence and is going higher. How much higher can it go? Well, it's going to go as high as all the paper money that's been printed, which in the last 10, 15 years, if you add it all up, money equivalents, credit equivalents, you're talking about a quadrillion, in the quadrillions. Bitcoin's at 400 billion, 500 billion, 600 billion, 700 billion. So it's going to start leaping ahead by the trillion.
In market cap. Well, I think there will be, first it was happening slowly, that the chaos that was all around us that none of us saw, because we were all like in the fishbowl, right? We were in the fishbowl of fiat chaos and the fiat dark ages. So we couldn't see what was around us because it was all that we knew. So into the world comes Bitcoin, and it was slowly converting people. It was like, the red pill, blue pill, and it was the orange pill. It was like, once you see it, you couldn't unsee it. So as more and more people were drawn to Bitcoin because of the price, then they saw what was all around them and were like, oh my God, I can't believe all this chaos. Like, whoa, like everything is insane outside the Orange Pill podcast Telegram group. And then, so this year is the 50th birthday in August of the US dollar. And so if the dollar does not survive until then, if it doesn't even see its 50th birthday, if it dies before then, just like, that's the beginning of the vulnerable age to COVID. So COVID killed put a final end and the nail in the coffin of the US dollar, because all they have is that printing, and it's exposed. Everybody could see that. Everybody's like, where's my money? Where's my money? I want my 2000. So therefore, I think Bitcoin, yes, will jump ahead 1 trillion and hit a trillion, 10 trillion, 20 trillion, and then no trillion. Like, it'll evaporate. There will be no US dollar. There won't be a dollar price or a dollar market cap.
No, it becomes a unit of account.
Yeah.
And there's no more dollars. And the dollar goes away of all fiat money since the beginning of 300 years ago, and that is to zero. Remember the Bernie Madoff scandal? He had a Ponzi scheme, was going for a long, long time, and he was paying off investors from new money coming in. 2008, during that market sell-off and credit freeze, suddenly it revealed the Ponzi scheme of Bernie Madoff. The tide went out, and you could see, oh my God, this guy's running a Ponzi scheme. So it was that event that crystallized in people's mind what was really going on with Bernie Madoff. Similarly, with the stimulus checks going out now from the government for COVID, people see the naked truth that the government is just prints money out of thin air, and they give most of it away to their friends, and they give a little bit away to other people. And that's the whole policy. There is no economy. There is no underlying economic model. There's no economic school of thought. It's just a guys in Washington printing trillions and keeping 98 cents of every trillion they print, and they give you a little bit here and there. And the first round of stimulus checks, of course, those people who put it into Bitcoin, they're up 400 or 500% already in less than a year.
That's what I was going to point out is that, Bitcoin, the parabolic sort of move started as soon as it was clear that the Democrats won the 2 Georgia seats, as soon as it. So what the markets were doing, what Wall Street in particular, because it was a huge institutions were doing, were front running this collapse. They were front running the hyperinflation. They were front running. They were not going to allow ordinary Joe Bag of Donuts to take his 2000 and put it into Bitcoin and reap the gains. They were going to go in before Joe Bag of Donuts because they have all the capital, right? Joe Bag of Donuts has to wait for the $2,000 in order to buy the Bitcoin. So what they do is they jumped in, they piled in before you could possibly do that. But nevertheless, because I don't think the dollar can possibly survive much more of this, and because of Bitcoin exposing the lie of it and the fragile situation and the chaos, as I keep on saying, the chaos that is the fiat dark ages and the fiat system around us. Because of that, like, whatever cash you get, like, get some Bitcoin, because 0.001% zero, a million Satoshis is going to be a life raft. It will save you because you've got power. You've got a voice. You've got say in the next consensus driven financial system.
Right. And a million Satoshis is a couple $100, $400.
Yeah.
So anybody can get a million Satoshis, and the price of a Satoshi could go to $1.
Or 10,000 Satoshis. Like, you're still able to convert fiat into Satoshis. It's amazing. You can go onto Fold app and start playing like their wheel of fortune and get some Satoshis.
True.
I've got almost 40,000 Satoshis from just hitting a button.
That's right. I got about 37,000 Satoshis on the Fold app by just playing the wheel every day. And in another couple of years, that could be worth a few $1,000.
That gives you a seat at the table at the new Bretton Woods, essentially, because there will be a new Bretton Woods because and this is the great reset.
Yeah.
Like if you have Satoshis, you have a seat at the table. It doesn't matter if some of these like Harvard ivory tower sort of people get together and think they're going to re-engineer the system. The fact is it's a great reset. You have your Satoshis. It doesn't matter. You don't need to actually physically sit with those those bums, trying to pretend like they know how to like fix your life. No, just hang out in the Orange Pill Telegram podcast group, the Orange Pill Podcast Telegram group. Yeah. Try not to get the orange sparkly shoe. You don't want that.
No, that's not good.
You don't want that. But what do you think, Max? Do you think it's time to go to our interview with Preston Pysh?
Preston Pysh, he's one of the brightest lights in the Bitcoin universe, and I'm looking forward to this with great anticipation.
All right, we're here with Preston Pysh he's a co-founder of the Investors Podcast Network.
Yeah, Preston, welcome. Great to see you.
Great to see you guys.
Right, Preston. Well, the year 2021 is also the year in which the US dollar turns 50. It has been a remarkable year for the fact that Bitcoin has started the year parabolic. Is this a hyperinflationary collapse of the dollar that we're actually seeing?
I think it's beyond just the dollar. It's all the fiat currencies all over the world. And, when you look at it and you say, how is something like that even possible? Most people were just going to laugh when they hear that because it's very inconvenient. And I think that that's probably the best word to use to describe it. The reasons you get so much pushback when people say what you just said is because it's super inconvenient for them to think about a world in which that might be true. Even if they think it's impossible, they just don't even want to go down that path. So the inconvenience for me is why no one wants to entertain even the thought of that discussion. But the fact of the matter is really clear. All these currencies, all these fiat currencies were all pegged to each other. They were all on a gold standard after Bretton Woods. And it shouldn't surprise anybody that we're seeing it all coordinated and sequenced. All the social unrest we're seeing all around the world is happening all at the same time. Why in the world would that ever happen? It's not like it's an accident. For that to all be playing out all at the same time across every single country around the world, there has to be some type of critical variable or critical element that ties all of that together. It all goes back to Bretton Woods. We all came off the gold standard at the same time. And then it was this floating relationship between all the currencies, and they continually went down. It was all engineered and manufactured since we came off the gold standard together. Now everyone's at 0% interest rates, and here we are at the end game, right?
Right. So let's look into it a little bit deeper. So as you point out, Bretton Woods brought in a gold-backed dollar. 1971, Nixon closed the gold window. We went to an all-fiat world. Today, it's the 50-year anniversary of that moment, and it looks like all fiat money is in a hyperinflationary collapse against Bitcoin. What's interesting, Preston, is that over the past few decades, and Nomi Prinz writes about this in her book called Collusion, the central banks around the world, for this to work, the central banks around the world have had to engage in collusion. So this money printing that's gone on and the interest rates that have come down to near zero all over the world, and in some cases negative, it's done through coordination, and it all has done for the same reason. All these countries have banks that are technically insolvent with huge mountains of insolvent debt on their books. And the only way for their friends not to have to declare insolvency is for the central bank to keep papering over that insolvency by what they call extend and pretend. You're going to, like Argentina went to a 100-year sovereign debt market. It quickly went down 40%, as one would anticipate. But this is a global conspiracy in the truest sense of the word. In other words, let me just add on to this a little bit. An economy like America or some other economy, European economy, Asian economy, there's supposed to be an underlying element of competition. But actually, competition went out the window when all the central banks decided to collude, bring rates down to zero to keep the zombie banks alive. And Bitcoin essentially called the whistle on this play. Preston, your thoughts?
No doubt about it. When you're talking about the liquidity on the bank balance sheets, when I think about commercial real estate right now, it is the biggest dumpster fire the planet has ever seen. And it's almost like nobody on Wall Street really wants to get into that discussion of how much impairment is on their balance sheets right now that has not been marked to market. Because if they started marking some of this commercial real estate to if you actually put it on the market to see what somebody would be willing to pay for some of this stuff right now, I mean, the amount of impairment that's sitting globally on these balance sheets is unfathomable. I can't even wrap my head around what that number would be.
Right. Now, last time we spoke on this show, you elaborated on something you've been talking about for a number of years. What would happen if corporate America started putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet? And lo and behold, very shortly thereafter, Michael Saylor at MicroStrategy made the announcement over the summer, yeah, we're converting our corporate treasury over to Bitcoin. And this seems to have unleashed a wave. So the question is, where are we at in that cycle? Is that the beginning of an avalanche of corporations now converting treasury over to Bitcoin? He actually did another thing. I believe you even talked about it. He was borrowing money at these ridiculously low rates, in his case, 75 basis points, to go out and buy more Bitcoin. So where are we at in that cycle, Preston? Is this the tip of the spear? Where's this going?
This is the tip of the spear. I think this fourth quarter closeout is going to just blow people's hair back as to how many companies are putting this on their balance sheet. Now, they might not be doing it in Michael Saylor style as far as, everything that they've got. They might be doing it to the tune of 5%. But I think the sheer number of companies that are doing it, and especially if we even get one big tech company here in the fourth quarter that puts some Bitcoin on their balance sheet, it's going to be the shot heard around the world. I think the debt deal is not something that's going to be nearly as replicated as just buying it and putting it on your balance sheet, at least not right now. But that deal, the way that deal went down and how that deal was oversubscribed by, I think it was about $150 million of oversubscription. And he brought it in at 75 basis points. My immediate thought, if I'm Michael Saylor, is, hey, maybe I'm paying too much of a coupon on this, right? Maybe I should have offered this into the market at 0%. So you can see there's pent-up demand. There are huge Bitcoiners in the debt market that want access to it, but because of their charter and everything else, they can't actually get access to it unless you're doing some type of convertible debt deal like Michael did. So it is going to be crazy. For me, I think this is going to be the thing that really kind of blows the socks off, but I don't necessarily see other people implementing this until probably halfway through 2021, maybe to the end of 2021, when people are saying, hey, hold on a second. I have a debt to equity of 0.1 or 0.2 for my company. So I'm in great standing. Look at what this guy did literally 9 months ago. He offered this up to the debt market with a convertible piece to it. You got to have the convertible piece to it for it to be able to do it at probably 0% or whatever, or just put the strike higher. I think his strike for people to convert and be in the money was around a $400 price. And right now his stock's at $532. So like if you took that debt deal, I mean, it's a glorious asymmetrical upside play with nearly no risk for repayment on the coupon and the face value of it. I mean, hell, he's got double the face value for the issuance sitting on his balance sheet right now. He could pay it back immediately. So if you're stepping into that deal and you're some hedge fund debt person, I mean, you could not get a better asymmetrical trade where you're going to get your money back. You're not going to look like a fool, but the participation on the upside is astronomical for them.
Right. I wonder if the covenants on that paper allow for early recall or not, but I haven't read it, so I don't know.
2 years early is what it is. It's a 5-year note, and I think they can reissue up to 2 years early is what I think it is.
Okay. Well, nice deal, Michael Saylor, you frickin' engineer, financial engineer extraordinaire. But this opens up kind of another, to follow up on this, kind of go down this rabbit hole a little bit. So, okay, back in 1992, Stan Druckenmiller, working at George Soros, figured out that they could do a run on the Bank of England with a huge borrowing, and they could disgorge the pound from the exchange rate mechanism because of that arbitrage, and they made a quick $1 billion in profit. Isn't this a similar bet where instead of Michael Saylor saying, you know what, we're going to borrow all this cheap money and buy back our own stock and get our executive stock options are going to go up, we're going to actually attack the Fed using that cheap money and make gobs more than we ever would buying back our own stock? Is it not a speculative attack, as that phrase is now used to describe such a play?
It no doubt is. And I think that's the thing that takes all of this into a hyper Bitcoinization kind of scenario, is when everyone starts to figure that out. This play that Michael Saylor is basically demonstrated probably at least a year in advance of anyone else being able to fully understand what it is he's doing right now, or at least the typical, managers and CEOs on Wall Street. When people actually start to see what's happening, that's going to be the play that everyone runs to, and it's just going to melt everything down. Because at the end of the day, this is not about replacing gold. I mean, yeah, sure, it's going to take some of that market share or whatever. This is about the debt market blowing up. All this debt, this 100 trillion, whatever number you want to use, right? It's an unfathomable number. All those deals are written that say they will be repaid with fiat in fixed terms or variable terms or whatever, but they're going to be repaid in fiat. It's toast. It's complete impairment. That's what this is all about. And it's just going to be, it's never happened in the history of the world at this scale, right? What we're talking about. And so that's why, going back to that word inconvenient, this is super inconvenient for people to even think about.
Well, let's tie a few of those things together, because you mentioned gold and you mentioned the debt markets. There's an old saying of never, don't fight the Fed. And the Fed has gaslit and abused and tamed bond vigilantes. They tamed gold bugs. Those were the two groups of vigilantes against Fed action. They don't exist anymore.
Well, Stacy, you didn't even have to try. For the last 30 years, I could have literally taken a ham sandwich and put it in the chair of a fixed income desk, right? And if it was trading long duration bonds, it was clobbering anything out there, right? Because the whole thing was manipulated. It was all engineered since we came off the gold standard. The way that they engineered everything to look like it was still functioning properly is they kept coordinating and bringing interest rates down. And if you're managing a desk of 30-year debt, like, you don't even have to try, and you're an all-star. Like, nobody can outperform you, and you don't even have to try.
Right. So that's been going on for 30 years. And then along comes Bitcoin. And what it does is holds up a truth mirror to the system, where suddenly it isn't all so obviously easy. It's like chaos and horror. Like, and is that what's going on right now? Like, if Wall Street is changing their mindset as well, if they're being orange pilled, if they see Bitcoin as an exit from this system that they know so well, the whole Fed system is their system, it seems like they also believe it's about to collapse.
They're looking in the mirror and they're still seeing this inflation CPI number of 2%. And they're saying, hey, I'm getting a spread above this CPI number of 1%. And, the Fed's going to keep buying it. So I'm going to keep making money, right? They're going to keep buying the bond market. So I'm going to keep making money. And where the realization of them looking in the mirror and telling themselves that that's the truth, where that's going to flip itself on its head, is whenever they come to the realization that the real inflation rate is the growth of M2, right? That's the real inflation rate, which is, let's just say it's 15 to 20%. Once they start to realize that that's the reality and not the 2% or 1% that they're being sold that CPI is, all of a sudden the mirror melts, and they're standing there in this moment of shock saying, oh my God, the whole thing's going to blow up because I've been living in this fantasy land that there's no reality and no truth.
Right. So the bond market is on a bubble. We've never seen interest rates this low in the U.S. in 240 years, in the United Kingdom in over 300 years. And it's in a multi-100-year bubble. That's the bubble. The Bitcoin is the pin to that bubble. But let me ask you 2 quick questions here. So I notice if I look at these charts, and I've been watching these charts for 40 years now, it seems like interest rates are starting to actually creep up. So is the bond market starting to wake up to the fact that the party might be over? And second question is, on this 15 to 20% inflation rate, which again, I give credit to Michael Saylor for hammering this point home, that you have to really take the blinders off and stop accepting this government printed 2% inflation number and include things like asset price inflation to understand the true picture of inflation. And that message has been propagandized by mainstream financial press, that 2% number. Is the mainstream financial press, when do they throw in the towel and realize they can't continue to be paid propagandists anymore? And to get back to my first comment there, is the bond market starting to sniff out a reversal?
I think the bond market's starting to sniff it out. I think some of the bigger, smarter people in the space are starting to say to themselves, hey, wait a second. Like, if I just start running this scenario of all this printing and all this stimulus that they're doing into the future, like this isn't making any kind of sense. Now, if I was going to caveat that, they're also still looking at it and saying the Fed's going to step in and exercise yield curve control at some point, because they cannot allow interest rates to go too high, or else the whole asset market just totally melts down. And they all know that. So I think you have a little bit of both of those kind of scenarios playing out, where they're saying, hey, this is looking scary, but they're still going to step in and do yield curve control. So let me just keep playing. Let me keep playing the game from the seat that I'm sitting in, because there's not too much else I can do based on all the regulatory requirements that I've got to continue to abide by. So it's kind of, you got people that sit in these seats, and you guys know more than anybody that they're making a paycheck. They really don't have anywhere else to kind of really go at the moment. So they're going to continue to play the game as they've been playing it. And unfortunately, it's just the whole thing's going to go up in smoke eventually.
Okay, Preston. So let's play a little guessing game. This is the situation as you've described it. You've got the bond market controlled by the bond dealers who have faith that the yield curve will be managed, and that the fact of the 20%, 15 to 20% money printing inflation will not be gotten into the price discovery of those bonds. And the question I have for you, this is going to be a bit of a guessing game. What if this Michael Saylor trade finds its way into the central banking system? So as we described at the beginning, there's a collusion. Central banks collude for this to happen, to keep these banks from having to go bust. What if one of these banks decides to break ranks and say, you know what, we're actually going to get out of this farce and we're going to start buying Bitcoin? And clearly that would be the kibosh on the game, would then be over. So the guessing game is this: which central bank is most apt to break from the pack and do the Michael Saylor trade and start buying Bitcoin? The choices would be Bank of England, Federal Reserve Bank, Bank of Tokyo, ECB, Bank of Russia, Bank of India,
China,
Bank of China. So those are, like, I think, the prime suspects. Which one of those banks could you see breaking ranks and doing the Michael Saylor trade and putting an end to this 40-year farce?
My Lord, I had no idea how to really kind of assess it. I know the U.S. has the most to lose, right? So if we start from that framework and you look at how advantageous it's been for the U.S. with the dollar over the last 80 years, you would think that they would be the hardest pressed to fight that. But like and I know, it really comes down to the leadership at the very top of some of these organizations. And if you have a person who happens to be in that role, that's a very creative thinker, that's open to, innovation and whatnot, they might be just the all you need in order for that expectation to be completely upset. So it's really hard for me to kind of say, oh, it's going to be this one or that one, because I think so much of it comes down to how strong of leadership you have at the highest level within each one of those organizations to maybe step out and do something really creative and something that no one would expect.
Well, speaking of leadership, we have the Biden administration coming into office in the next week or two. They promised everybody $2,000 stimulus check. There were even some vandalism incidences at McConnell's house and Pelosi. The McConnell one was quite interesting because somebody spray painted across his door, "Where's my money?"
Where's my money?
And then just on the Friday afternoon, Joe Biden gave a press conference and he said he's going to aim for a huge stimulus package in the many trillions of dollars. Now, it was interesting in that as you talk about this manipulation and the rigging of markets, so many price signals don't exist anymore except for Bitcoin. So at a certain point on January 5th, we saw Bitcoin shoot up as soon as it was obvious that the Democrats were going to win both of the seats in Georgia in that runoff election. And they knew, therefore, that they could get the trillions of dollars through the Senate. They already own the House. So will Biden be able to actually do this? Or if Bitcoin goes to $100,000 by the time he gets it through in March, like, is that just going to, is that going to force their hand? Will Bitcoin actually force their hand?
Well, so let me come back to that. So what I think we're seeing politically play out is there's a real push for UBI instead of QE. I think the when you look at the example that you provide is so perfect, which is "give me my money" written on the door of the elected officials. It is now on both sides politically popular that they need to get hands into the general population through UBI. My thing with that is, if they do that in some type of 3 to 5 trillion kind of way, I suspect that the CPI gauge is going to start going up and that it's going to start showing some signs of inflation in the way that they measure it. If that happens, it has to be met with more QE. It has to be met with more yield curve control and more buying of the debt market, right? So not only are you now adding just via QE, now you're doubling down because everyone's demanding UBI. It's not like you can just do one or the other. If you're doing UBI, you're matching it with more QE because of the yield curve control. So getting back to your question, yeah, I think the gauge, I think everyone's going to be looking at Bitcoin and saying, all right, how in the world is this thing at 100,000? I don't understand why people are buying this nothing at 100,000. And that's going to force them to dig into it and say, all right, I've got to understand how anybody could possibly be making this argument right now. And I think you're starting to see some of that even right now at 40,000, where people are saying, I know I have a lot of things on my Twitter feed that talk specifically about how the 2-week difficulty adjustment works, how it corresponds with the 4-year halving cycle, which doesn't allow the supply to get pushed to the left, right, through the mining process, all that kind of stuff. People are now starting to say, this has been around for too long. It's too insane for people to be paying $40,000 for a fictitious coin, right? They're saying that to themselves, and they're saying, I have to dig deeper and understand because there's clearly something I'm missing. $100,000 is only going to amplify that desire to educate themselves further that we've never seen before, right?
Right. Well, I've noticed in the millennials and Gen Z, their level of intelligence, awareness, financial literacy is off the charts, fantastic, versus, let's say, Gen X, which, remember, they were the dazed and confused generation. The boomers, of course, which I'm a part of, they are not really aware of what's going on at all. Speaking of Gen X and Gen Y and Gen Z and rising stars, let's talk about Jack Mallers. So your recent interview with Jack Mallers went viral. So tell us what's going on with Jack Mallers. You know, we've known him for a long time. At the second I met him, I said, this kid's going to run the world very soon. He just has it in his eye. You know, he's got that eye of the tiger. Your impressions of Strike Global, the overall advance on Lightning as an investor in general, as a Bitcoiner, what's going on over there? Tell us what happened during that podcast, because it went viral. Everyone's talking about it. Give us the synopsis. What's happened?
At the end of the day, when you look at the Lightning Network, I know whenever back in 2017 in the summer, when all this got, when the port got open for all this to happen, right? The thing that I was always concerned with was, what's the incentive structure for somebody to start using this? And I just couldn't wrap my head around why somebody would open up a channel, take their money off of, because we're all looking at it as like, hey, we're just preserving our wealth here with Bitcoin. But why would I be incentivized to take that, open a channel and put it in Lightning? Like, how am I getting some type of benefit from that? And after talking with Jack and seeing some of his work, it became really clear to me that the incentive structure is for all these clearinghouses, because what they're able to do is they're able to take their expense structure, right, of this Rube Goldberg machine of clearing, because that's what these clearinghouses are. It's a giant expense of Rube Goldberg. This person I trust, and I send it over here. It has to wait this many days, all that crap, right? This now makes any size payment immediately cleared, and you don't need crap in between the two points, right? And so that's what Jack's demonstrating to the world right now is the Bitcoin network, not the Bitcoin store of value. The Bitcoin network is about to revolutionize clearing in such a dramatic way, in such a cost-effective way, that if you're a credit card company or you're a big bank and you're not trying to figure out a way to leverage this technology, you're off your rocker, because if you can front run everybody else, the cost savings you're going to be able to have by doing this are astronomical. So it's just mind boggling.
Yeah, it's the back office, the entire back office of this industry gets obliterated.
And
also, but isn't, you know, the use case for so many of these altcoins is that we're faster and do more transactions. Doesn't this finally put a lie to that whole theory? I mean, the hard forks that we've seen, they're all hitting 99% losses against Bitcoin. But all these other types of altcoins, this Jack is going to blow them all up.
He's going to blow them all up.
Right.
And, you know, from the very beginning, my philosophy in investing has always been, who's the smartest person from an engineering standpoint? Who's the smartest person from a finance? And it was very clear to me, Adam Back is the total genius engineer of so much of what happens in Bitcoin. And so back in 2017, I didn't necessarily really understand why, from an engineering standpoint, why this was such a huge innovation. But I saw people like him and others that were the engineers from the very beginning saying, this is the right approach. This is the right direction for Bitcoin. Now, 3 years later, it's becoming really evident to everybody why, from an engineering standpoint, this modular open source design that him and so many other smart engineers were promoting 3 years ago, it's all becoming really clear to everybody. But it took some time. And so when you look at all these altcoins and all these people that are very self-interested, that did pre-mines, that got glorious, you know, very wealthy through the whole process, right? The thing they really cared about was getting wealthy through that process. And if the design and whatever they were trying to do worked, all the better. But at the end of the day, it was their own self-interest that was driving most of their decision-making. Whereas when you look at what Bitcoin's been doing, this is all about the people. It's all about the stuff that both of you two have been sharing and spreading since day one, which is your interest, is the person at the lowest level, making sure that they have a fighting chance to front run inflation. And boy, when we're talking about 15 to 20% inflation, if people buy into that, you're having to be an Olympic athlete to outpace this thing at this point, right? Like you're not going to go and work and be able to outpace this thing because it's going that fast.
Right. You know, you are the co-founder of the Investors Podcast Network. So I have a follow-up question to you about that in terms of investment in Bitcoin, because we do have a lot of thousands of people in our Telegram group, Orange Pill Podcast Telegram group, and they always ask, am I too late?
Not even close. I mean, I really think that what we're seeing, I mean, just pull up a chart of the paper mark from 1920s Germany. And when you look at 1923, it came unglued, right? It was going up. You had a debasement that was very similar to where we're at right now, where from a 1 to 20,000 debasement rate leading up to 1923. 1923, it went from a 20,000 debasement up to 100,000 debasement to 1 million to 10 million to 100 million. And that last part of the curve is where a significant portion of the capture was if you were sitting in gold, right? And I actually think that we're probably going to see something similar to that playing out here in the coming 5 years. It might be this year, it might be 5 years. I'm not quite sure, but it's coming, and it's coming quick.
Right. I think the question is not, am I too late when you see Bitcoin at 40,000?
Yes.
The question is, am I willing to hold something that's going to go to zero? And that would be paper money. Right?
Paper money.
So even if Bitcoin doesn't, quote, go up, I can guarantee your paper money is going to zero. It's such an unusual question because no paper money has ever survived over 300 years. None of them lasted. So it's like you're making a bet that of something that's happened hundreds of times over 300 years is going to happen again for the exact same reasons. Or this thing that's been around now for 11 years that, as you point out, it's got this great track record. It's not a matter of getting wealthy at this point. It's more a matter of not becoming destitute.
I would tell your investors, you don't even need to have a large amount of exposure for this to at least protect yourself in your buying power. If you go above whatever that protection level is for how much net worth you're trying to protect, the amount of capture from here to where we're going is just astronomical. So I would tell you, if they're scared about entering because they think they're late, dollar cost average, figure out what percent you actually want to get to of whatever portfolio size you've got, whether that's 5% or 20% or whatever the number is. That's for them to decide. And a lot of it's going to come down to their age and their tolerance for risk, right? But man, I think just get your toe in the water, start dollar cost averaging, do something to start building a position, because what you're trying to effectively do right now is jump on a rocket that's literally flying by. And there's no way that that's ever going to be a comfortable experience for somebody. So, you just have to take the first step. And I think the first step is just start dollar cost averaging and building a position and start getting comfortable with it.
I also think, they were asking it at 20,000. Oh, I guess I'm too late. Should I wait for a pullback? When's it going to pull back? And then Scaramucci announced he bought 185 million at like 23,000. I was like, he's buying it at $185 million worth. You could buy $10 worth. Don't worry. Don't wait for a pullback. Then it happened after January. They were asking, oh my God, it's too late. It's over 30,000 now. And then it was announced that One River Financial bought 55,000 Bitcoin. I was like, you're early still.
Well, the problem is human nature. Everyone wants a deal.
Yeah.
They think that if I'm not going to get a deal getting into this, well, then I'm just going to wait. And they're just, that's not how you can approach this.
Especially if you heard about it at 10,000 and we're waiting back then for a pullback and then at 30,000. So, you said something else that really struck me, and that was the Rube Goldberg machine of the entire financial system all around us. There are various Rube Goldberg machines. And that is the interesting thing about people say, I don't understand Bitcoin. It's so complex. And I'm like, it's so simple. And it's exposing all this complexity around us to like in a Wizard of Oz sort of fashion to create this illusion that there's any value.
Yeah, exactly. Compared to the current system, it's dead simple. When you think about, because I worked on Wall Street for many years, and the systems are built on top of each other. They don't really, one system didn't replace the other ones. They're built on layers and layers and layers. And you get down to sending, let's say, moving one account from one financial institution to the other. And it literally starts running on computers from 20 years ago.
COBOL.
And there's a COBOL is running these computers. And, they're exchanging faxes, That's like you're going back in time because it's not backward compatible, right? It's you got to build layer on layer on layer. And so that stuff gets completely obliterated.
Because any change for them is risk.
Yeah.
They're looking at it like, hey, this 1980s computer that does this one task here, if we replace it, we might have some risk incurred. So let's just not change it. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm with you, Max.
Well,
Crazy.
yeah, people should go Google that because it is interesting. The U.S. financial system is based on COBOL, which is there's like 25, 30 people that still know how to code.
They're dying off. They're actually they're dying. They're dying, and they won't have anyone to service the system pretty soon. So getting back to your point about Q1 2021 and disclosure. So these disclosures are going to start coming in. You're forecasting we're going to see some shocking surprises.
I think so. Maybe it's that I'm hopeful, but when I look at the price action since November, the price action has been so aggressive. It's been relentless. Like we saw that sell off just a couple days ago where you saw the price drop $4,000. I don't even think it was 3 hours later that bar had completely recovered. And I'm looking at this bar and I'm saying, that is the most bullish one-day bar I have ever seen in my entire life. And then it just ran another 5,000 from there. And so the only thing that I can think that would be driving that kind of price action is you have people with a lot of treasury that's stepping in and they're just buying their faces off. So, I mean, that's my expectation is when we go, when they start filing their fourth quarter, I think we're going to see a lot of companies saying, oh yeah, we put a little bit of Bitcoin on our balance sheet. I mean, who isn't?
And one final question here. What do you think of the statement from the OCC, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, regarding banks being allowed to use public blockchains?
Stacy, this was massive.
Yeah.
This was massive on Monday. And how jacked was the front running over the weekend of all
Yes.
of, I mean, it became very with Ether and all that kind of stuff. That was such a front run Wall Street sludge type event. But anyway, addressing what you're talking about, this was massive for them to say, hey, yeah, by the way, if you want to start doing clearance via a blockchain, that's completely legal. And we promote that. We allow that. That news was game changing because for the last 5 years, all I have heard about is, oh, well, don't invest in Bitcoin because, they're just going to regulate the living heck out of it and they're going to make it go away. And we're seeing the literally 180 exact opposite of that playing out in real time. If you want to compete with Singapore in the financial realm, well, guess what? They're tokenizing everything from a commodity sense over there. And people here in the US and over in the UK, they're saying, hey, if we want to stay in the ball game, we better wake the F up.
Right. So Stacy makes this point.
Up.
Stacy's saying that China's coming out with their central bank digital currency. And so this announcement from the US on the OCC is a kind of a response. And they're saying, forget it. We can't compete. At this point, we're just going to go right to Bitcoin.
It's a competition between nation states at this point. And this is what you guys and everybody else has been saying for years is the game theory on the nation states is that it's going to get competitive. And guess what? Here we are. We're not surprised. The Wall Streeters are surprised, right? But we've been talking about the game theory on this for years.
I got my money on Jamaica. Jamaica's going to win this whole thing.
Where's my money? Where's my money?
Bob Marley forever. Anyway.
Where's my money? I mean, it's getting written on the doors of sovereign nations between nation states, right? That's what's playing out.
That's a good way to look at it. Where's my money?
Exactly. That's exactly right. We had that credit freeze in 2008, and they proved that they could go, Hank Paulson could go to Washington and demand $1 trillion blank check with no documents or data or anything to support it. And the Congress said no. So they crashed the market. And the next day they said yes. And
You know-
so now the whole fraud's been called out with Michael Saylor and Bitcoin. And now we got the game theory kicking up to the sovereign level. So the elephants are dancing, and we've got basically the electrical energy underneath the dance floor converting to a pump on our personal stashes. I like that.
I had a guy who shot me a private message the other day, and he says, I can't believe it. The Australian dollar's almost at parity with the US dollar. We might actually hit 100,000 on the Bitcoin price before you guys. And my immediate thought was, how dumb for policymakers in Australia to be getting outprinted right now, right? Like, how are you not printing and trying to capture everything you can? Because that's what we've got right now. We've got the ultimate rat race of printing going on around the world. And if your country's not printing fast enough, everyone inside of your domestic domain is falling behind. They're not able to take advantage of it and buy up the assets and everything else that everyone else is clawing for. So when I heard that, my immediate thought was, their policymakers aren't winning the rat race.
Where's my money?
Where's my money? That's
Really?
the theme.
Right. Thank you so much for being on Orange Pill Podcast. It was fantastic, and I'm sure our audience is going to love it.
Yeah, Preston, thank you.
Love you too. Appreciate the invite, and really looking forward to where 2021 takes us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Where's
again,
my money?
Good call on the corporatization of Bitcoin from, I guess, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Good call there, buddy. Good call.
sir.
Nice.
Thank you, sir.
Well, that was Preston Pish. He is rising up the ranks of the influencers in the whole Bitcoin space.
See his name all the time now. He's really captured a great audience, and his insights are spot on. I remember when we were talking to him initially back a few months ago, we were diving into this thought that he had about corporations putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet, really, and what that would do, and kind of thinking through what might happen. And then, of course, MicroStrategy did exactly that. And so when he talks about having this reporting season coming along in a few weeks, about the fourth quarter, and about corporations disclosing now potentially doing the Michael Saylor trade, and we're going to find out pretty soon here in the next week or so, we could see a whole wave of corporations all announcing that they've got a Bitcoin position. And certainly the volume on the exchanges supports this, that there are some huge buyers out there. And this is what's catching a lot of the Bitcoiners by surprise. They're saying, where's the 50% drop off? Where's the crash? How come this thing keeps going up? The corporations are sitting on literally trillions of dollars of a melting ice cube. So this party is just getting started.
Right. And again, on this whole Rube Goldberg machine sort of concept to our financial system, when Bitcoin separated state from money, it's the same situation that we had back in the 18th century when the thinkers in the Enlightenment separated the church from state. And they realized it came to the conclusion that there was this elaborate Rube Goldberg machine that had been built over thousands of years, whereby there were certain people that were divine and no questions were asked about it. And they got to live in palaces and wear luxurious robes and all sorts of things. And you paid taxes to them, and they went to war on your behalf. And then suddenly it was called into question. Hey, wait, what about us? And the same thing has now happened with money. And Bitcoin is exposing that it's just an elaborate con.
Yeah, and the Enlightenment, right? The separation of state and religion. This idea, looking at religion kind of objectively, and realizing, wait a minute, this is just a lot of smoke and incense, and not a lot of there. So we don't need that, actually. So now we've got the same thing happening with money, saying like, all the machinery of Wall Street and the global finance is just this Rube Goldberg machine that's super complicated. There are only a few people that know how to work it. So they're the priests in this new papacy, and they get a lot of power because they know which button to press and what sequence. But actually, you can get rid of them all with Bitcoin.
Right. And if you go to YouTube, and there are loads and loads of videos of basically a Rube Goldberg machine, right? There's a bunch of usually young men who like to design these elaborate system of, you want to get this ball into this cup, And instead they build an giant elaborate thing of knocking that block over to tip that water supply down there and to push the ball down there. And it, you know, our financial system is that, our money system is that now, when Bitcoin is just like plunk, it puts the ball right in the hole. Like, you don't need that.
Right. That Jack Mahler's demo he did with the guy in Ireland, where he's sending dollars over Strike and it arrives in that guy's wallet as euros in less than a second. It's got to, anybody who's in the business of sending money, Western Union or what have you, in the remittance business, they probably lost about 10 pounds instantaneously in flop, sweat, and fecal matter. Right? It's like, oh my God, I'm out of business. This freaking kid in Chicago just put everybody out of business.
Right. Well, currencies by market cap. Did you see that? And this might already be different by the time this airs, because where there's like 24 hours between, or 36 hours between recording this and airing. But Bitcoin is now the 14th largest currency in the world, right above the Russian ruble and the Thai baht, and right below the Swiss franc and the Brazilian real.
Yep, it's flipping all these currencies. Now, Bitcoin is at 80,000 a coin. It'll flip silver.
Wow.
So at 80,000 a coin, it will be greater in value than all the silver above ground. So that's going to make all the precious metal bugs flip out hard.
It might even be less than that now, because silver dove like 10% on Friday because, of course, right before Biden went up before the podium to announce that he's got trillions of dollars to start, where's my money? He's giving it to all those people asking, where's my money? Well, right before then, gold and silver crashed. And of course, they need that, right? Because it's the psyops by the Fed. The Fed is Fed speak and psyops, right? It is all a Rube Goldberg machine. They have to keep on, as soon as you start to look and see the Rube Goldberg machine, they do a big distraction and
if there's a few more trillion they're going to print, and the gold bugs would be bidding up the price of gold, so they need to be punished because they're not on the socialist team. They're not on the Venezuelan team here, so they got to be punished. And we know how they do it. We know all the fines they've paid. The Deutsche Bank just paid another huge fine for manipulating $100 million manipulating gold, precious metals.
They probably would have done a higher fine, like $1 billion, like they did to JP Morgan, but Deutsche Bank, I don't think even has 100 million left.
Right. They just manipulate and print more. So, and every major bank's involved. And again, like the way Bitcoin is the mirror that holds up the lie to so much. The douchebags are really douchebags. The people who hate Bitcoin, they were douchebags before, but some people would say maybe he's not a douchebag. But now with Bitcoin, we know these douchebags are really douchebags. And there's no coming back for a lot of these people now. Just as we know that the actual inflation number is 15 to 20%. It's not 2%.
Well, that M2 money supply number he mentioned, remember we've shown that chart. We showed that in the past week, whereby money supply M2 has gone up like parabolic like this. And Bitcoin has gone up right along with it. So when somebody says to you, hey, Bitcoin is parabolic, this is a bubble, like Peter Schiff, right? So if you just show them the M2 money supply and then ask them where gold prices are, where is that? I mean, I think that argument is right that that there has been a parabolic expansion in the paper gold, and that's kind of containing some of it. But also the price of gold and silver, they say, the headlines say that part of the reason why it crashed was that, I guess, with Biden announcing these trillions of dollars and stimulus of where's my money, that the bond yields started to rise, interest rates started to rise. So,
yeah, sure, sure, and the dollar was up.
Was it?
Yeah. So to manage the matrix, there needs to get a gold sell-off to be followed through on by dealers to make a quick buck. You would need to start talking about higher yields and about an environment, a stronger dollar, right? So those are the parameters from which to launch this hologram of financial reality, which Bitcoin is saying is bullshit. But this is almost always the case. So it's the same game plan. Imagine if Tom Brady threw the exact same play every single play. He, as quarterback, he always went for the inside button run to the left, right? Imagine if he did that on every single play. How successful would he be? The other team would have to be paid to look stupid. Okay, so the Fed does the exact same play on every play is exactly the same. The reason it works is because the team that they're opposing is a paid propagandist douchebag. It's like the Harlem Globetrotters, right? Does anyone believe that the Washington Capitals that they play in the Harlem Globetrotters are not paid to lose? Does anyone think that the Harlem Globetrotters win every game just because they're better? Okay, because the opposition's paid stooges. The mainstream media, the financial media, the bond dealers, the currency dealers, the gold dealers are paid stooges in a farce, a pantomime called the U.S. economy. And Bitcoin basically is taking a huge dump in the face of these fucking douchebags. And that's why the price is going up. I'm sorry, did I use coarse language?
That's a huge volume of coarsity in a short period of time.
I'm sorry.
But this is going to be an interesting collapse of empire because usually there's a huge number of military bases, infrastructure, institutions all over the world, and you have to pull all these people back, and you have to, usually you're actually own the administration of these nations, and the people have to rise up and fight and die and kick you out. That's what happened with the British Empire and all the other empires. America is just like their debt is just going to evaporate overnight. There will be no remnants of it other than some sort of black hole of debt that people look at every once in a while as some sort of monument, like a pile of paperwork that they all say.
Yeah, I mean, this insurrection that happened in D.C., it looked like ComicCon, right? Remember ComicCon, the annual convention in Vegas of superheroes and people dressed up like animated figures.
Yes.
And I think that's how America ends, in one enormous Comic-Con festival where everyone dresses up like animals or superheroes, goes out into the street and beats the crap out of each other.
Well, that's what you're saying. Like
The end.
That's the Rube Goldberg. That's the whole con of this whole system is like if you tune into the news, if you tune into CNN, if you tune into MSNBC, they were like, oh my God, this is a fascist coup and blah, blah. And they're like treating it like it's real and it's a fire in the Reichstag. And then you look at the images and you're like, those are like cosplaying, like
LARPers.
Like, what are you talking about? Are we looking at two different things? Like, what's going on? So
right.
I think
okay, they use the White House to do TV shows like The West Wing, and it's a prop. Right. So why not use it as a prop for Comic-Con? I'm sure that guy who was seen walking off with the podium from the chamber,
the speaker's
has
podium.
got a 3-picture deal at Paramount this week. He'll be seeing starring in like LARP Man, invades political offices and steals the furniture.
But this is what happens throughout history at these sort of transition, fourth turnings and all that stuff. Throughout history, thousands of years, look back at it. There's certain periods of time where there's a disintegration of institutions, and what happens is our disintegration of our grasp on reality. So you have people not like self-flagellate or turn to fornication and crazy manners during like the end of the Roman Empire or the end of during the Dark Ages and the beginning of the bubonic plague. People went crazy because all the institutions were no longer there. And that's that smuta sort of concept.
Right. It was self-flagellation or hedonism.
Yeah. So you have these sort of at disintegrating moments, all sorts of chaos, starts to swoop around and you see crazy, insane things. So while you're sitting on in the hardest money ever invented of Bitcoin, we feel really calm here. But out there, it's just like, you tune into Twitter and you can go, like you don't know if this like this is some weird comic book that's gone like you're reading a stream, or if it's fake or if it's real.
Yeah, people keep telling me you got to see this cartoon, Morty and Eddie.
Rick and Morty.
Oh, Rick and Morty. Right. So I've only seen a few minutes of it, but it looks fucking nuts. So I'd imagine that's pretty much just a documentary at this point. That's reality.
It's we have passed the where's my money nuttery.
The where's my money nuttery has been passed. What's that cartoon we like? Powder Puff? No.
Wonder Twin Powers activate.
Wonder Twin Powers activate. That's the cartoon we like. That's
yeah, none of these Generation Z
No, we like
or
that.
Millennial
Wonder
remember
Twin
that.
Powers activate.
So I want to also talk about something else that he said that is picking up on something you and I have said. We said this like over 10 years ago, is once we started to really see that it was the financial and monetary systems are giant Rube Goldberg machines. It's like, why is the US like not using these trillions of dollars that they're printing? Why don't they just build infrastructure and like really amazing buildings and cities and subways and trains? Like it's free. Like why not just like they have to keep on pretending like, oh, you got to pay your taxes. We got to cut the budget on this. And it's like, no, you don't. Just like build everything like amazing, because it's just like this moment here where I keep on telling you it's amazing that anybody is willing to give you Bitcoin in exchange for fiat. The same thing is like real infrastructure, real stuff. Like imagine if you just, with all this fakery that we've had for the last 50 years, like imagine if we had built like high-speed rail, amazing rockets that could take us to Mars. Like we could have done that.
Right, that's right. But the problem is that on the institutional level, all the smart people went to Wall Street. So nobody in Washington is smart. They are literally the dregs of society. Like that guy, Jerry Nadler, who pooped his pants on stage.
Yeah.
That's the typical politician in Washington, D.C. They can't even figure out how to work an adult diaper, much less build infrastructure. So that's why the money went down the toilet, because all the smart people went to Wall Street.
Well, with that, I think it's a good time to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for being with us. This was fun. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Preston Pish as much as I loved it. And of course, this episode, as always, is brought to you by swanbitcoin.com/Stacy, Stacy. But you could also misspell my name now, because there is also Stacey.
Yes, you can misspell Stacy's name as Max, Max, and you get the same deal. But I get to gloat that I have more referrals than Stacy. Imagine my glee and fun times I'm having.
But as Preston Pish and we were talking about is like, oh, is it too late? Well, the thing is, any number of sats that you can get, you're going to be sitting pretty. So if you sign up for swanbitcoin.com and use Max or Stacy as your referral code, you get $10 worth of sats.
Yep.
Those $10 are going to be worth, the equivalent, the purchasing power of what today you could buy maybe a car or a refrigerator. Who knows? Like it'll be something. It'll give you a seat at the table. Those $10 worth of Satoshis will give you a seat at the.
You can buy Senator with that.
At the Great Reset, you're going to have a set at that table.
Let's do without the mics and camera. We'll do Wonder Twins activate.
Okay. This is for our man, Crypto After Dark, Rick Stoner.
Wonder Twins activate.
No. Wonder Twins powers activate.
Oh, right.
Okay. Wonder Twins powers activate. Form of a goodbye.
Bye.